Urgent. Iran sends arms to Russia. United States on alert. This is an unexpected turn of events that has put the Biden administration on high alert. The United States has issued a diplomatic warning. Intelligence reports, along with statements from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, indicate that Iran has sent FAT 360 ballistic missiles to Russia amidst the conflict in Ukraine. This action has raised concerns in Washington, with many wondering if this will trigger new sanctions or, even worse, a possible military response. Satellite images have revealed something even more alarming. Russian soldiers are being trained on Iranian soil to use these missiles. What does this mean for the already devastated Ukraine? This decision marks a considerable escalation in the war in Ukraine, with implications not only for Kiev, but for global geopolitics. The FAT 360 missiles, with a range of 75 miles, allow Russia to strike targets near the front lines with greater accuracy and destructive power. Blinken expressed his concern about the devastating impact this new Iranian military assistance could have on the course of the conflict. Furthermore, dozens of Russian soldiers have already been trained in Iran to operate these missile systems, demonstrating an increasingly deep military cooperation between Moscow and Tehran. Meanwhile, Russia has shown its ability to adapt to the sanctions imposed by the West. Despite efforts by the United States and its allies to isolate Moscow, the relationship with Iran continues to strengthen. The United Kingdom and other European countries have reacted swiftly to this new threat. However, the response from Moscow and Tehran is clear. Their alliance is firm and unwavering. Both American and European intelligence agencies have confirmed that the FAT 360 missiles have arrived in Russia and are ready to be deployed in Ukraine. For Iran, this is one more step in its strategy to challenge Western dominance and consolidate its global influence. This collaboration not only involves the delivery of ballistic missiles, but also the exchange of advanced technology. This situation has provoked harsh criticism in the United States. For its part, Ukraine has reacted strongly. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, the FAT 360 missiles could change the course of some of the most important battles, as they allow for more precise and close-range attacks. In addition to the missiles, Iran has also sent hundreds of drones to Russia since the beginning of the war. For many in the West, the growing military cooperation between Iran and Russia is a sign that the war in Ukraine is taking a new direction, one that could prolong the conflict and hinder any attempt to reach a diplomatic solution. Tehran has tried to downplay the importance of these military agreements, claiming that it is not directly involved in the conflict in Ukraine. Iran's involvement in this conflict is another example of how the war in Ukraine is taking on a global dimension. The FAT 360 missiles represent a significant tactical advantage for Russia, with their ability to strike targets 75 miles away with precision, avoiding the depletion of its own arsenal. This is not the first time Iran has been involved in a conflict beyond its borders. This move has generated concern among Ukraine's European allies, who fear that these missiles could be used to attack targets near NATO borders, which would significantly raise tensions in the region. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has tried to downplay this military cooperation, stating that relations with Iran are simply an extension of their trade and political ties. The war in Ukraine has made it clear how international alliances can influence regional conflicts. As Russia continues to receive support from countries like Iran, the pressure on the West to step up its assistance to Ukraine is also growing. So far, the West's response has been to increase sanctions against both Iran and Russia. However, the effectiveness of these measures is questionable, given that cooperation between Moscow and Tehran continues to strengthen. The United States' involvement in the war between Ukraine and Russia has been a mix of support on several fronts: diplomatic, economic, and military. Since the beginning of the conflict, Washington has provided billions of dollars in military assistance to Ukraine. This aid has included air defense systems, armored vehicles, and artillery ammunition. In addition, the United States has spearheaded multiple rounds of sanctions against Russia, with the goal of economically isolating the Kremlin and weakening its ability to finance the war. These sanctions have impacted key sectors such as energy, banking, and technology, although their true effectiveness remains a subject of debate. On the diplomatic front, the United States has worked closely with its NATO and European Union allies to achieve a unified and coordinated response to the conflict. This has involved holding international summits and high-level meetings to discuss strategies for supporting Ukraine and putting pressure on Russia. However, the United States' role has not been without criticism. Some analysts argue that extensive military aid could prolong the conflict and increase the risk of escalation with Russia. Others warn that the sanctions policy could have negative side effects on the global economy. Despite these concerns, the US administration has made it clear that its support for Ukraine is unwavering and will continue for as long as necessary. The President of the United States has reiterated on multiple occasions that the goal is to guarantee the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, as well as to send a strong message against aggression and the violation of international law. In short, The role of the United States in the war between Ukraine and Russia is complex and multifaceted, ranging from arms supplies to the imposition of sanctions and international diplomacy. As the conflict continues, Washington's influence and decisions will remain a crucial factor in the development of this global crisis. Since the outbreak of the war, Russian President Vladimir Putin has taken a series of actions that have significantly influenced the dynamics of the confrontation. Putin has made his goals clear: to secure Russian influence in Ukraine, safeguard Russian-speaking populations, and challenge the Western-dominated international order. To achieve these goals, he has resorted to a mix of military, political, and economic tactics. On the military front, Putin has ordered operations that include the annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the recent full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. The Kremlin has justified these actions as necessary to defend Russian interests and counter what it perceives as NATO's expansion towards its borders. In the political arena, Putin has used propaganda and disinformation to influence public opinion both inside and outside Russia. Russian state media have played a key role in spreading the Kremlin's narrative and discrediting Western and Ukrainian governments. On the economic front, Putin has sought to mitigate the impact of international sanctions by diversifying Russia's trade relations, particularly with nations like China and India. In addition, he has promoted the self-sufficiency of the Russian economy, encouraging domestic production and reducing dependence on imported goods. The impact of Putin's actions on the global dynamics of the conflict has been profound. His decisions have led to unprecedented international isolation for Russia and have elicited a strong response from the international community, including economic sanctions and the provision of military aid to Ukraine. However, Putin's tactics have also resonated with certain sectors that see his leadership as a defense of traditional values and resistance to Western hegemony. As the conflict drags on, Putin's strategies will continue to be a determining factor in the evolution and eventual resolution of the war between Ukraine and Russia. His decisions not only affect the parties directly involved, but also have repercussions for global stability and international order.